Hello, welcome to Calls with your Kinky Bestie. I'm Emma. I am a submissive and mentor for fellow Kinksters. This podcast is all about insights into kinky life and dating, sharing my personal experience and stories, and help share mindset shifts too to get you into a confident space, more confident than you are now. So get ready. It all starts now. Hey, bestie. All right, we're back. We had a really lovely episode last week talking about, kinky desires, where they kind of start, why they're so important, why they're a part of you, how acting on them is deeply critical in loving and embracing yourself, but also is super healing for everyone you're going to encounter in your life and everyone beyond that and before that. And this is just such a beautiful thing that we're doing by, embracing those desires that we have in the back of our head and actually, stepping past that and stepping past the embracing phase and into the fully accepting, fully in this, doing this step. So let's talk more about that. What it actually looks like to verbalize your desires. And turn them into not just desires, but actually goals, things that you're actively working towards. And then once we've been able to verbalize that whole piece, how to actually start taking action towards having it and starting to make things super real for yourself. Because I noticed this trend whenever people are starting to work with me, or even in their first couple sessions or whatever. Whenever people do get comfortable actually verbalizing their desires and maybe even being able to share them with others, like their partner or whatever, sharing them even with yourself. It can be so uncomfortable to even get there that once you kind of get there, your brain goes okay, well, I've done the hard part. Now I'm ready for it to happen. And it might be really frustrating for you if you've, gotten through that really uncomfortable work of verbalizing the thing, and maybe you've had some acceptance from your partner or just others in your life. But now that has happened, you're, wondering and noticing, well, this still isn't actually real. I'm able to communicate that this is what I want, but it's still not happening for me. So what the fuck? That's what this episode is. So, okay, in this first half, let's just talk about why actually verbalizing your desires is so important. And for me, the importance that I place on them is, I kind of view this as the clarity step. So, you can think and stew on this forever, but until you're able to actually summarize your goals into something that you can physically, tangibly write on paper and communicate to somebody, that is when it's actually getting clear and you're almost distilling it into the true heart of the matter. So that's a really, that is the power of putting something on paper. You always hear that, putting it on paper is making it real. And I don't agree that that all the time by putting it on paper is what's going to make it real. But it is going to be a really impactful step to clarifying on your intentions so you actually know what it is that you're working on. And by physically putting it somewhere outside of your head and onto a page or even a note on your phone, that's what I tend to do, by the way. You're actually putting it somewhere that you can come back to and reflect on. And, you're putting it into the physical world, not just this, whatever this mess of a space is in your head, right? So that's the power of it, is really just clarifying your intention, and it's something that can be communicated to yourself and others, and just, getting super fucking clear on what it actually is. Because if you can put it into words, if you can write it on paper, that's clarity. And that's the beauty of it. And not to say this has to be the most perfect copy edited, sentence in the whole world, but it's much more powerful than just that desire living in the back of your brain, sitting there waiting to be, even put into words. It's putting into words and then actually putting it physically in a place in front of you into the world, in one way or another. So there are, so many ways that you can do this, this verbalizing step. You can write it privately to yourself. I think that's usually the step that I start with, is writing it out to myself somewhere. I usually have like a journal or like an active note on my phone where I'll put these types of things. And then there are a few ways that you can verbally put this into the world, beyond just your personal your personal sphere too. So maybe if you're dating, this can be like desires that you're putting even onto a dating profile. So you're putting it physically out there into the world that way. If you have a partner or even just friends or community, you can also like be sharing these desires verbally, like throughout conversation. That is a really impactful way to put your desires into the world as well. And all this verbal part is like the intention of this still is to just start getting clear on what it is you actually want. And when you're sharing that with others, you're also getting clear with the people that you're, around what it is that you actually want. So by you putting it onto a dating profile or getting clear on this in conversation, that's you getting clear with whoever it is that you're interacting with or is seeing that profile, what your desire and what your intention is, and just expressing the desire that you have, again, outside of your head, and not only into your physical reality, but then the reality of the people that are around you as well, who are then able to perceive you more clearly because you're actually verbalizing and communicating what you actually want. So it's so beautiful. Oh, sorry, I'm hiccuping. Okay. So once you're able to get through that step of making things so clear that you're able to write them on paper or chat about it with somebody or pop it onto a dating profile or whatever it is, the next step is actually acting on it and being someone who doesn't just talk about it, but is about it. So let's pause and let's come back to that one.
Just a little break to share that if you are loving this podcast and my content, if I'm someone you could see yourself working with, but you're wanting more direct support for your specific situation, I do offer mentorship. It's personalized to you, private video or phone calls with me, so you can chat about your situation and figure out a solution that's going to work for you. You can visit my website. It is kinkybestie.com/mentorships to see what's available and to book in your spot on my calendar. It's Kinky with a Y at the end and Bestie with an IE at the end. The link will be in the show notes, so you can check it out there. Back to the show.
Hi, Kinky Bestie. We're back. We're talking about verbalizing your desires into the world so that you can get really clear on them and then start taking the fucking action and being a person who receives those goals or those desires or whatever it is. So, if asking is getting clear on what you actually want, how do you actually get what you want now that you've made it clear? And again, this is where sometimes people can get frustrated or get a little stuck if they've already put a lot of effort and worked through uncomfortable emotion to be able to just, get even that far of putting it into words and sharing it, into the universe privately or publicly, or even semi-publicly, just with people outside of just you. So once you've done that work, which can be really fucking uncomfortable, let's be honest. Like, for example, you've realized, hey, I have this desire, like I want to experience a certain kink scene. I feel really submissive. I want to be with a dominant partner who would do this thing with me or do this thing to me or whatever it is. and you've put in all this work and momentum to be able to verbalize that into the world. And let's say you verbalize that even to your partner, who is, theoretically, the most important person in the world to you and one of the closest relationships you have. So you've shared that this is what you want, but then because the as far as you've gotten is just becoming someone who can say it out loud and be clear on that desire, it can be really frustrating if you're then like not willingly or quickly then receiving that thing, because you've said what you want, right? And that's really important. But the next piece is taking that actual action, whatever that looks like. So there are a ton of different ways to decide on what that next step will be. I have a really great episode on this, about how to I distill it into this concept of fast tracking your kinky goals by deciding like what action is going to be most impactful to get there from here. So I highly recommend that resource if you haven't listened to it before, or even if you have, I will link it below so you can go back to it because it'll be especially potent now. But once you're past that phase of just communicating and verbalizing, the biggest part is really just picking an action to do and doing it too, and really showing the universe that, hey, I'm so serious about this. Not only am I willing to clearly state what I want, but I am becoming a person with these actions I'm taking. I'm becoming a person who does have this desire. So what are, there's so many different ways that this could look like, but I want to first get clear on what action does not look like. Action is not endless research. So, you listening to this podcast, you listening to blogs, you absorbing content on social media, and just like absorbing and listening is not action. It's powerful, it's important, it's not action. You need to have the action piece too. So whenever you're like absorbing content through this podcast, through a blog, whatever, what are you then actually doing with it? So, because if you're leaving these episodes just sitting on the information and letting it live in your brain forever, that's the same as you never actually sharing your desires. Like, you've got to actually do something about it, and act like you're a person who receives this thing to then be able to, receive this thing. Because the alternative is you not acting like a person who can receive this thing. And let me like ground this into reality. So if your desire is to be in a dominant like scene with your partner, like you want to be the sub, you want to have your partner dominate you in one way or another, and you are able to tell that to them, but then you're turning around and none of the daily actions that you're actually doing in your behavior is showing that at all whatsoever, you're really sending like mixed messages into the world, and also to your partner, that like, hey, I say this is what I want, but then I'm doing something else. So by you taking action, that's you getting even more clear on whatever that desire is that you were able to verbalize, either verbally or written or however. So this is the part where you're actually like aligning your actions to match up with those words that you're saying, and just get even more crystal clear with the universe. Not only is this what I say, not only is this what I say I want, it's also what I am working towards and actually doing. So like, look, universe, I'm ready to receive this, because I'm doing my part now. I'm not just saying that I will. I'm actually doing it. So if you are someone who, like me, has ADHD or is neurodivergent, or maybe it's just part of your personality and who you are, that it's hard for you to change. Maybe not that it's hard for you to change your behaviors, but it's hard for you to get consistent and make like new habits and routines, and just changing your actions not only once, but then like over and over and over again to align with this like new reality that you want to have. one of the easiest ways to do this is to start aligning your home and your life accordingly, so that like the systems around you are set up for you to do those actions without even really having to think too much about it. So I actually just dropped a free guide on this. It's a mini guide on how to align your home and life in a weekend, just like a simple short shifts that you can make in a weekend to then make your life more attuned and aligned with you taking these steps every day. So I'm going to close there, hop into that guide, and I've also linked that episode on how to choose those next action steps as well. So you can use both of these resources are totally free. You can use them in tandem together. I would recommend to start with the fast track, which is the choosing actions one, and then hop into that free mini guide as well. And I will see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much for joining me this episode. You can follow the podcast on the platform where you're listening to get updates with new episodes. You can follow me on social media at Kinky Bestie. I'm on Instagram. You can also check the show notes for any links or resources that I talked about in this episode, or just more ways to connect with me. And please share this with your kinky friends who could benefit from this type of content. There is also an option for each podcast episode to engage with Q&As or polls. So I'd love to hear from you and create future episodes around what you want to chime in with. So please check those out in the show notes too. And I look forward to hearing from you. Bye.